Okay, yesterday and the day before yesterday, we were solving problems involving integers using counters, positive and negatives, and we put plus signs and minus signs. But did you notice that how all the numbers were pretty small? Well, what happens if the numbers get really big? We're going to have an issue. We can't be writing pluses and minuses for really large numbers in the hundreds and thousands. So we need to have a set of rules involving integers for addition and subtraction that'll help us solve any addition and subtraction problem quickly. So we're going to copy down some rules here right now. Addition and subtraction rules. There are 3 of them. Rule number 1 is no double signs, exclamation point. And you should ask yourself this question: do I have any double signs? If yes, you need to fix them. If you have something like plus -3, see how right here there are 2 signs together? There's no number in between that plus and that negative. Yeah, we have the parenthesis symbol there, but really that's just to separate the 2 signs so that you can clearly see them. But there is no number in between them. That's a double sign. You need to get rid of that. To get rid of a positive negative, you want to change that to a negative. It's like you're just dropping the plus sign. Okay? What about the other situation? A negative negative or a double negative. 2 negatives right next to each other. Maybe they'll have a parenthesis in between them, but there is no number between them. Again, that's a double sign. A double negative always becomes a positive. So a negative -3 would just be a 3. So after you do that, you change those. I want you to rewrite the problem with the new symbol in it. Please, after you do that, don't look back at the one with the double sign in it. It doesn't matter anymore. You've rewritten the problem into something simpler. Step number 2 is to ask yourself, do my numbers have the same sign or different signs? Once you've changed those double signs, I want you to think of each number as a number with a sign. If there's nothing in front of the number, it's positive. If there is a negative sign to the left of it, it's negative. If there's a plus sign to the left of it, it's positive. So you can circle each number and its sign and then ask yourself, do these 2 numbers have the same signs or different signs? If they have the same signs, you should add those 2 numbers together. If they have different signs, you should subtract those 2 numbers. And just do the math. Step number 3, once you've done the addition and subtraction, is to look back at that problem that you rewrote in the beginning and ask yourself, which of these numbers looks the biggest? Which one of these numbers has the largest absolute value? See, the biggest looking number, it will determine whether or not your answer is positive or negative. So if we can determine which is the bigger looking number, it's going to tell us what I should put for my sign for my answer. Okay, so let's take a look at a few examples real fast. Example number 1 says 3 plus a -2. Well, that plus negative that you see here, that's a double sign. We need to circle that double sign, cross it off, and if you remember and you look back at the beginning at rule number 1, a positive negative becomes a negative. So I will change that sign into this negative right here. Step number 2 says, do my numbers have the same signs or different signs? So I circle my 3, which had no sign making it positive, and I circle my -2, which has a minus sign in front of it, so it is negative. Since they have different signs, I know I'm going to subtract. And we already know that 3 minus 2 equals 1. But we're going to still go back to do that 3rd step. Which of the 2 numbers in step number 2 looks bigger? Yeah, it's the 3. So it has to be a positive answer. All right, now take a look at example number 2. -3 plus a -2. Now this problem is just a little bit different from the first problem because the 3 is now negative. But still, we have that double sign right here of a positive negative. Like in problem number 1, we're going to change this into a negative sign. So a positive and negative crosses out and becomes a negative. This time, in step number 2, when I ask myself, do my numbers have the same signs or different signs, I can see that both numbers are negative. So a -3 and a -2. When I have same signs, if I look back at number 2, it says to add those numbers together. So 3 and 2 is 5, and I write that down. Then I ask, what is the biggest looking number? Well, they're both negative, so does it really matter? When I have same signs, I'm just going to use that sign, and my answer is going to be negative. Great, now let's take a look at the third example here. It says 3 minus a -2. Now, we have a double sign again, but this time it's a different double sign. So let's go back to step number 1 and take a look at what we do with a double negative. A double negative becomes a positive. So I'm going to cross out my 2 negative signs, and I'm going to turn it into a plus sign or a positive sign. Now, when I rewrite my problem with that positive sign, I get 3 plus 2. We know that 3 plus 2 is 5. But we're still going to look back and go, hey, number 3, what's the biggest looking number? Oh, wait a minute. They're both positive, so it doesn't really matter. The answer's got to be positive. And finally, the fourth example, a -3 minus a -2. Again, I have a double sign of 2 negatives right next to each other. 2 negatives, we know, become a positive. So I'm going to turn that into a plus sign and rewrite the problem. So I have -3 plus 2, or -3 positive 2. Are my signs the same or different? I circle the 2 numbers, and I see that they have different signs. Because they have different signs, step 2 says I have to subtract them. So 3 minus 2 is 1. And then the third step asks, which of those 2 numbers is the biggest looking? I can see that 3 looks bigger than 2. It has a greater absolute value. So therefore, I'm going to use a negative sign in my answer. All right, now that you know the rules, we're ready to go on and do some problems using these rules.